there's some stuff we should have done in the beginning, and because we didn't, now we're struggling. And we want to talk about understanding what the project really needs, and I'll share with you some project management planning methodology. There we go. All right, I'm going to ask you a question. What I'd like you to do is open your chat box and type in the answer, yes or no. Did you ever get this question? What do you want to be when you grow up? Remember that? Did you get that as a kid? Yeah, right. What did you say? Type that in the chat box. What did you say? I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a veterinarian, a marine biologist. I want to be the boss. Love that. Doctor, singer, firefighter, millionaire. Love your thinking. Midwife. Cool. Love that. Want to save the world. Einstein, firefighter, astronaut. Great. How many of you ever answered that question this way? When I grow up, I want to be a project manager. Probably no one ever in the history of that question. Well, you know, my mama was a project manager and my daddy was a project manager. I don't think it probably didn't exist when we were growing up, right, Diana? It did, but we didn't call it that. So here's what I make up. If they hired you as whatever, and then they said, hey, Carly, have we got a thing for you? We want you to manage this project. Oh, don't fret. Because here's one tool that everybody has, regardless of whether you've studied project management or not. Everybody has project management experience. Think about it. Think about it. How many of you have a family, regardless of how big that is or what it looks like? Okay, that's project management. There are things you've had to do within that family to make sure that stuff happened and people stayed healthy and alive and whatever. There's project management experience in that. How many of you are a solo parent? That's extra project management experience, conflict management, negotiation. You're a doctor, you're a nurse, you're everything, right? Anybody ever go to school? You made it through high school or community college or four-year university or grad school. That's a project, right? All the planning and the discipline necessary. Whoever had a goal and you achieved the goal of School of Hard Knocks, right? If you ever set a goal and achieved it, that required planning, that required management. You have project management experience in that. If you've ever bought a house or rented a house or you've ever moved into a place, that's project management, right? Went to college, raised kids as a single mom. Bless you, Tiffany, right? And who's ever traveled anywhere and you made it there safely and back? That's project management. So what I would invite you to do after this short class is think about all the different experiences you've had in your life, especially non-work experiences, and what are some of the skills that you've learned from those things that are transferable to the work world of project management. And if you're wondering what the top skills are, I want to share that with you now. You ever heard of Indeed? Wonderful place where you go to post jobs or go to look for jobs. They do research as well, and they asked a bunch of companies that regularly post jobs with them, hey, when you're looking for project management, what skills are you looking for? And this is what some of the top companies who work with Indeed say they want in terms of project management skills. Quiz, what do you think the number one skill is people are looking for? Drop it in the chat box. What do you think the number one project management skill is people are looking for? People skills that, yes, comms, you nailed it, Phil. Communication. You got to have your communication skills on point. Because think about all the different people you have to communicate with, the stakeholders and the sponsors and the key user groups and the people working on your team, and sometimes regulatory agencies and sometimes the media and all sorts of folks. And you've got to communicate clearly and effectively with all those people. Number one project management skill. 2, leadership. You got to lead people through sometimes difficult situations. Look at the last couple of years. We're 22 months into this thing I call a prolonged global trauma event, AKA COVID, the pandemic, right? So you got to show some leadership. Organization skills have to be top notch. Negotiation skills, because sometimes you're negotiating with other managers to have them to let you borrow their people to come work with you on your project. Can I please have Carly for the next 6 months? Only 2 hours a week, please. Can I have Benjamin for the next 3 months? Right? So you got to negotiate things. Team management, time management, because you're managing all sorts of, it's like a master juggler, right? You're juggling all sorts of things at once. risk management, because stuff happens, as we know, problem solving, budget management, and motivation. So those are the top skills identified by companies who work with Indeed that they're looking for in their project managers. What I would like you to do is take a look at that list and just think to yourself, which of those is your top skill? Well, I'm really good at negotiation, or I'm really good at communication, or I'm really good at leadership, right? Which is your top skill? And which one of those do you know right now, without a doubt, I really need to work on that one? I'm weak in that area. I really need some help with that one. Whatever your top skill is, keep doing the things that allow that to be a top skill for you. And you can always learn more and do better. The bottom skill, the one you need to work on, figure out how to get better at that. Let me give you some example ways to do that. One, find somebody in your organization who is really good at that skill you need to improve. Ask them if they'll mentor you. Hey, I hear you're really good at risk management. I'm working on some projects and I really need to get better at that. Would you mentor me for a couple of months, right? Or who's good at time management or negotiation? Get a mentor from within your organization. There are lots of podcasts and books and articles and videos that you can read online, right? To learn more about these things. If only there was a place where you could go to get quality expert help to improve all of these skills. I wonder where you could go to get that. Come take a class with us, because we teach all of these things, right? So make sure you sign up either individually or with your team, because we can customize for you. All right, let's talk about what is a project. What is a project? Projects are different than tasks. Projects are different than regular work. So I want to clarify this. If you're managing a project is defined as a temporary. It has a start time and it has a finish. There's an end point. If it goes on and on and on and on forever, it's either the longest project in the history of the world, or it's just work, right? A project is a temporary activity designed to produce a unique, something that does not exist, product, service, or result. That's how you know you're in a project. Anything that doesn't meet that, it's a task or it's just regular work. Now, how do you start the project the right way? Drop it in the chat box if you can relate to this. How many of you have worked on a project and you got a little ways in, maybe a third or a half of the way, and then you realized there were some things you did not do at the beginning, and now you're struggling because of that? Yes, anybody have that? Right, Tim? Right? Drop it in the chat box. What's one thing you realized you should have done before but didn't? What was the one? Yeah, scope, Nikki, right? Maybe the scope wasn't nailed down. You didn't get clear about the results you were looking for. What was the outcome, right? What are the requirements? Clear outcomes and plans, timelines, right? Many of us struggle with the same things, right? So when you're starting a project, here's the whole point of the project, and make sure you're clear about this. The project provides value and creates change. The project should provide value and create change in the organization. Here's your current state, right? This is what's going on now, and you need to capture that information. Here's our current state. And then we want to improve it and get to this future state. And we're going to do that by creating this project. And we have a number of activities within that project, right? And when we're done with that project and it goes live and it runs for a little while, our future state should be better than it was before we started. That's the whole goal of a project. Now, there's two other pieces in this. You have to answer this question. What problem does this project solve or mitigate? Are you solving a problem, or are you just adding value to the organization by creating a new thing? What problem does your project solve or mitigate? And or what added value does the organization expect? You got to get clear on those two things. Otherwise, you have no idea what you're doing or why you're doing it. This is about the why. Why are we doing this? Once you've identified that, the next step is to find the key players, identify the key players, right? I'm going to give you a list of who the key players are. Number one, and probably most important, is the project sponsor. If you're managing a project right now, or you're about to start one, jot some of this stuff down because you'll need to answer these questions. Who is the project sponsor? This is the person that probably saddled you with this project in the first place. What you probably said, hey, Alexander, come here. I got a project for you, right? They are also probably the person that has the final say over making any changes to the project, budget, timeline, scope, any of the project constraints, right? PMI, jot this down if you're not familiar. PMI, Project Management Institute. They're the sort of global coordinating body that is, for all things project management. If you want to get a certification in project management, you go through PMI. They do a lot of research. And according to PMI, 41% of projects fail because of an unidentified, uninterested, or uninvolved project sponsor. Anybody here ever work on a project where you didn't know who the sponsor was? And then somebody had to make a decision. You're like, well, I don't think I should make that decision. Who do I go to, right? And then you're searching around, wasting time trying to figure out, well, who has responsibility for this? You got to identify this person at the very beginning. Number two, the project manager. That's probably you, right? You're probably that person. And this is the person who is ultimately responsible for making sure that everything gets done successfully, that you complete the project successfully, right? Now, in some larger projects, you might have an overall project manager, and then there might be sub-project managers responsible for key elements of the project, right? Or there might be one project manager with leads for certain areas, right? So you have to identify who those people are. Then there are key stakeholders. These are people who have a vested interest in the success of the project. They could be senior leaders in the organization. They could be key influencers in the organization. They're people with something to lose or something to gain, right? They may not be involved in the planning meetings, but they care. You need to ask around and figure out who's really interested in the success of your project. Those are key stakeholders. They're ultimately the people that you have to make happy. Some user groups, right? Who are the key users, right? The people that you're actually creating the project for. If you're implementing a new computer system or a new onboarding process or a new drug, right? Your patients are the key user group. Your employees are the key user group, right? So who are those people and what do they want from the project? You need to go ask those questions. SMEs, subject matter experts. These are people who have expertise that may come in handy. At some point in your project, you may have to consult someone from legal or HR or IT or people who know how to build web pages or code things, or people from marketing or operations or logistics or finance or whatever, right? So who are those people? They may not be involved for the entirety of the project, but you might need them, to consult with, at certain points during the project. So identify those people. There are also interested groups, consumer groups. Maybe there's some city, county, state, or federal agencies, the three-letter acronym agencies that you have to abide by or have some rules to follow. The FDA, the EPA, the somebody, right? So who are they and how are they related to your project? That may not be true with all projects, but with some projects, absolutely. Are there any consumer groups, the media, employees, contractors, vendors, suppliers, etc.? Those are examples of interested groups. Am I making sense so far, folks? Is this helpful? Okay. So now that you've identified the key players, what do you do with them? Here's the next step. You interview them. You make a list of all the folks that are key. Now, it may not be everybody from the list I just mentioned, but you identified who those people are and you interview them. This is, if you are the kind of person that just likes to jump in and get stuff done, stop. Right? Measure twice, cut once. You need to be patient and plan this, because the success of your project is only going to be as good as your planning. And if you're working on major projects, there's a lot of time and money and resources involved. You need to do the planning up front and let that take as much time as it needs, right? You got to interview these people and ask them. Here's one question to ask them. What does project success look like to them? Ask them what project success looks like to them. Ask the sponsor, hey, when we complete this project, we have a successful outcome. What does that look like to you? Ask the stakeholders, what does successful outcome look like to you? The user groups you're building the project for, what does success look like to them? You're probably going to get 50 different versions of success. Somewhere in there, you need to whittle that down to one successful outcome vision and work towards that. Ask them their requirements. What do they need from this? And then use their feedback to clarify and define the project constraints, right? Absolutely, Elaine, this does help with goal setting too, right? So that's what you do with those key players. You interview them, you find out what their needs and wants are, and you whittle that down to a final set of project requirements. And then decide which of these people that you talk to, the key players, are going to be part of your communications plan. Who do I give regular updates to? It may not be everybody, but there's some folks you need to keep looped in quite often. Now, when you initiate a project, there are 3 components you absolutely have to get clarity on. Otherwise, you're probably just spinning your wheels. When you initiate a project, you have to start every project with a clear objective. Some of you already put this in the chat box, a clear deliverable, and a clear success measurement. We'll talk about all 3 of those. So when we talk about objectives, what we're talking about is what the organization hopes to get from the project, right? Do you solve a problem, or do you create some new capability that you didn't have before, which adds value, or both? So you got to be clear about the objective. What does the organization hope to get from this? This is why you got to interview all those different people to find out what they really want. This is the why of the project. Why are we doing this? That's the objective. PMI says the number 1 cause of project failure is lack of clearly defined objectives. Anybody agree with that? How do you know what success? Yeah, how do you manage to success if you don't know what success looks like, right? You got to have a clearly defined objective. Number 2, deliverables. This is the physical, tangible thing that you're supposed to produce as a result of the project. Is it a new website? Is it a new drug? Is it a new onboarding process? Is it a new computer system? Is it a new app? Is it a new a protocol for something, right? It's the physical thing that you give here. Here's the report. It's an analysis. This is the end of the project. Here's the report. It's the physical thing that you produce. And you got to be clear with all those folks, the key players you talk to, about their requirements for what that end thing should look like. If I just said, hey, Delphine, plan a lunch for the team, and that's all the information I gave you, right? Good luck with that, right? You don't know the budget. You don't know the timeline. Is it vegan? Is it gluten-free? Am I just getting ice cubes for everybody? What am I doing, right? What's my budget? Are we talking fast food, mid-level dining, or, 2-star Michelin? Like what, how many people, right? So you got to get clear about what exactly specifically it is they're expecting you to create. Then the third thing is, how are you going to measure the success of this? How will you measure the project's effect on the objective? There are 2 success measurements here. One is how well you, the project manager, manages the project. Were you on time? Were you on budget? Did you manage your resources well, right? Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm glad you like this. And the second measurement is, does the finished project actually meet the agreed upon objective? Does it solve the problem? Does it give you a new advantage you didn't have before, or both? To get that answer, you're going to have to take a snapshot of what your situation looks like before you start the project. Here's our sales, here's our customer satisfaction, here's our safety, whatever the project is designed to deal with. Then finish the project, let it run for a couple of months, and then do an after shot. Okay, well, sales improved, safety went up, turnover went down, quality improved, right? So that's the second measurement, right? You have to get clear with all of the key people as to what the win measurement is. How do we know that we were ultimately successful and we can label this project a win, right? Yes, there is a recording. Look in the chat box. Join Offsite. It's free, and you have access to all the recordings as well as the slideshows that you see here in Offsite. So to summarize, the 4 questions to start every project: do we have a clearly defined objective? Do we have a clearly defined deliverable? Do I know what we're supposed to produce? Do I know who the sponsor is? And do I know who the project manager is? You got to ask those questions at the beginning of every project. Now, here's the one question. Here's the one bonus question. And I mentioned this earlier, but I just want to lay it out here again. What does a successful result look like to you? Ask everybody that has anything to do with this project, especially the key stakeholders, what does a successful result look like to you? Because that will help you define what the requirements are. These are all the things the final product must have, do, and look or feel like, right? And within this, you need to think about quality. Like, does it need to be good, better, or best, gold, silver, or bronze, right? You may not have the budget to get to gold level quality as a requirement. Maybe you only have the budget to, we can do your really nice bronze. We can do plastic. We only have the budget for plastic, right? We can't do titanium. So, not everybody can have everything. So talk to all of those people about their requirements. There are must-haves and there are like-to-haves, right? There are must-haves and there are like-to-haves. I've had clients tell me they don't know what they want. And it's my job as a PM to help them figure it out. Yes, John. And that's why you have these conversations and interviews with people to help them figure out what they want, because some folks don't know, right? So go back to those things. Are you trying to solve a problem, or are you trying to create a new thing that gives us an advantage? Or is it both? If you get clarity about those 2 questions, okay, now you're better able to figure out what they're asking you to produce and what that should look like. Once you have all of that, the next step is to nail down the specifics of what you're doing. And this translates into 5 project constraints. Every project is going to have these same constraints, and you have to get as clear as you can about these. Number 1, scope. Scope is a set of boundaries on your project that identifies the goals, the deadlines, and the deliverables. And also the size of it. Are we doing something that only affects one department or the entire company? Are we doing something that affects one branch or all branches? Are we doing something that affects one state or nationwide, or is it regional, or is it global? What's the scope of our project? The next one is quality. These are all the processes and activities that determine the objectives and the responsibilities so that the project satisfies the needs for which it was undertaken, right? So what level do we need to get to this? Oh, well, it needs to be platinum level. Okay, well, then you better have platinum level budget. We don't have that. Okay, you're getting a nice silver then. Cost, this is the budget, the total funds needed to complete the project or work. Or if they don't give you a dollar budget, the number of people hours required to get this project done. You need to track that. And here's one good reason why. The next project, they're going to ask you how long it's going to take or how many people you're going to need to do that and for how long. If the next project is similar to the last project and you tracked how many people hours, you have a better chance of estimating people hours for the next project. Time and material, right, Gary? Next one is time. When are you going to start it and when are you supposed to finish it by, right? Sometimes you don't have any control over this. How many of you were working on projects at the end of 2019? And then 3 months later, this little thing called COVID popped up and boom, now your timeline is probably shot. You got to replan. And then finally, resources. This is the people or other resources, capital, material, goods required for you to successfully complete your project. Those are the 5 project constraints. You have to get clarity about each of those things. I missed the beginning. Yes, the recording will be available to watch again, and you can get it from Offsite. Carly will put the link back in the chat box. So here are 3 critical components of project success. Every project, regardless of duration or scope. Number 1, you need to get as much clarity as possible with the sponsor and the key stakeholders as to the parameters of the project constraints, right? All those 5 things we just talked about. Number 2, you need alignment, agreement, and support from all the parties to help you meet the goals as agreed to. And finally, people just need to act. You need to act in accordance with the agreed upon goals and requirements to meet the objectives. There's the link for the recording. Now, document everything. Good documentation is key to success of this, right? So make sure, here's some documentation tips. Make sure that you have a container or a location for all your project related documents, whether that's a SharePoint site or a Google Drive or a Dropbox folder or someplace to put all of your project management documents and make sure that's backed up. You got to understand your own notes. If you're one of these people that likes to write and you can't read your own writing, it looks like a prescription at some point, stop. Type so everybody else you share the files with can read the writing. Make sure you document the expectations, responsibilities, and the action items, and you communicate those to the people that need that information, and then send summaries of all the decisions and progress reports to the appropriate participants. Those are some tips for documentation. Now, let's talk about everybody's favorite subject, the bane of existence for every project manager. Here's a bonus tip. Here's a bonus tip before we move on. If you're using Outlook, go into Outlook and create a category for your project. Then assign all your project emails, tasks, appointments, and contacts to that project category, because you can search in Outlook by category. Because if you're trying, I got emails on this, and where's everything? Assign the emails to a category. Now, the bane of everybody's existence, scope creep. You agreed on one set of requirements, and then somebody pops along later and says, hey, can you change that and make that bigger or do it faster, or right? Here's an example. They said to you, Carly, would you please manage this project? Just build us a tiny house in the woods. We want a place to escape to on the weekends, to do some reading or just relaxing. Tiny house in the woods on wheels, so it's mobile. We can move it around. That's what we want. And Carly says, you sure? Yes. Okay, great. Here's the budget, the resources, and the time, and everything, right? She starts to build that. Later on, the same person comes back and says, hey, Carly, I was wondering, could we change the project? I'm not thinking tiny house now. I'm thinking mansion by the lake with a dock and a yacht and tennis courts. Right? Right? Some of you have had a similar experience. It started like this, and then they wanted that. Here's what I say. No. You actually don't say no right away. Here's what I do. I ask this question. Do you still want the tiny house in the woods? Do you still want me to finish project number 1? If so, that's a separate project. That's project number 1. I'm not going to try to turn this into that. That's not going to happen. This is project number 1. If you still want me to do this, we're going to finish this. Then this becomes project number 2, which starts an entirely new cycle of project planning. No, it's not. It's not, Melissa, right? Don't try to morph your small project into the giant project. If they still want that, finish it. If they don't want that, then stop what you're doing, cancel it, close it down, and then start project planning on the next one. Well, can I have a pony? No, you can't have a pony. It's not part of the scope. You cannot have a pony. That is not part of the original scope. All right. Scope creep is the number 1 reason projects do not finish. It's the number 1 reason, a unicorn. Yes, just put a thing on its head. Scope creep is the number 1 reason projects don't finish, according to PMI. 49% of projects reported to PMI actually finish on schedule. 50% of them experience scope creep. So what do you do when somebody comes to you and they say, I want to change the scope of this? You create this thing and you use it as your guide. It's the project management triangle, and it's got quality in the middle, scope up here, time down here, and then resources and cost over here. So if somebody comes to you and they say, hey, could we move the project up? Can we cut the time in half? And instead of a year from now, can we do it in 6 months? How do you respond to that? Well, look at the triangle. If you cut the time in half, does that mean you can still accomplish the same scope? Probably not. If you can't sacrifice scope, well, maybe we can reduce the quality. Well, if we can't reduce the quality, then you're going to have to come up with some more money and some more people to help me get this thing done at the same scope, at the same level of quality in half the time. Well, we can't do any of this. We can't give you any more resources or costs. Then we're not having a rational conversation in reality. Because the truth of this is you cannot change one thing without changing at least one of the others. Just doesn't work that way, right? That's not how life works. So how do you respond to these change requests with the management triangle? Pleasantly acknowledge, oh, okay, well, let's take a look at that. You want to change the scope? Let's take a look at that. You want to change the timeline? Well, let's take a look at that. Don't agree, just say, let's take a look at that. Then discuss the impact of the proposed change on the other constraints. Well, now, if we move the timetable up 6 months, then what's that going to do to the scope? You still want to do this, a global rollout in 6 months? Oh, it's going to be tough. Yeah, so we're going to need more people. Oh, we can't give you more people, then we need to lower the quality. Oh, we can't do that either. Then what we need to do is break this out in phases. We can't do the whole world in 6 months if you're not willing to change the resources and cost or the scope or quality. So here's what we can do. We can do a third of the world in 6 months. That's phase one. Another third, 6 months after that, phase two, and the rest of the third, 3 months after that, or whatever the math works out to be, right? So you can break it out into phases. That might work. Ultimately, as the project manager, you probably don't have the authority to make those decisions anyway. So have them come up with a plan and the resources and send them to the project sponsor who does have the approval to make those changes. That's my suggestion. Now, once you've nailed down all the constraints, you've had all the conversation, who's a visual person? Anybody visual? You need to see a map, a big picture of your project. If you are, then I recommend that you get a bird's eye view of your project. And how do you do that? Use mind mapping software. Use mind mapping software. Just do a search, Google mind mapping software, right? It's easy. You're basically drawing boxes and linking other boxes with arrows and lines, right? But it gives you an overall view of just what you're talking about. So you can do a simple one like this, where you go, all right, here's my project. Here are my objectives. Here are my goals. Here's my project team. And here are the deliverables. That's your 30,000-foot view of your project. Print that out, post it up somewhere, or have it on a slide. You can constantly remind yourself, this is what we're shooting for. This is what we're shooting for. This is what we're shooting for, right? You can go a little more in depth. Here's my project. Here are all of my stakeholders. Identify them. What's my management plan for them? Here's what I have to procure. Here are my risks. Here's my communications, HR, quality, cost, time, scope, and integration. So you map all of this out just to give yourself, the sponsor, key stakeholders, and anybody else, your project team, the bird's eye view of exactly what you're managing and how things are related. Anybody like this? Yeah, Miro is a great tool, Liz. There are a bunch of free mind mapping software programs out there. Your organization may already have some. You can do something, kind of sort of like this in Word or PowerPoint, but there are specific tools that are much better for this. Now, once you've mapped all of this out, you got to develop a communications plan. This is one of the key things you have to do. So who do I need to communicate with about what and how often? The sponsor, the stakeholders, the project team, and any key user groups. How often do I need to communicate to them? Daily, weekly, every 2 weeks, every month, every quarter? It depends. Find a regular cadence. create a regular cadence, because one of the ways people lose motivation on project teams is they don't hear about what's going on. People want to achieve goals and they need regular updates to let them know if they're making progress. And then how much detail do you need to give them? Some people are not detail oriented. Some people love details. So find a happy medium. Here's one example. I'm going to zoom in here. So take a look at this. Project name, manager, period, covered, blah, blah, blah. Overall project status. If you just look at this from a glance, what do you notice? You notice all the colors, right? I don't have to read the details. I just see, all right, is everything green? Okay, fine. Moving on. If I see some yellow and red, okay, let me zoom in here and see what's going on. Overall project status is healthy. There's a summary. And then look down the left side. Budget, schedule, quality, scope. These are all the project constraints, right? What's the status? Who owns that portion? And then any notes about that. Down below, risks and roadblocks. And then for upcoming work, the date, the status, and details. Everything you need, one page, one template. I just found this searching on Google, right? So find something or create something simple like that you can send to everybody, make your life easier. Or if you have somebody that's looking for project management experience and they're good at writing, bring them on board to be your project communications manager, have them do this stuff. Here's another tip for managing projects well. Establish regular project meetings with the sponsor, with the key stakeholders, or give them regular status reports if they don't have time to meet, with the project team and with outside vendors, contractors, and suppliers. So you make sure there are no surprises, right? You don't want any surprises in your projects. Establish regular meetings. How often should that be? Initially, maybe you want to meet with certain people, especially the worker bees, the doers, every day for a week or two, just to make sure people are on track and everybody knows what they're doing. Once it feels like you're in a good rhythm, maybe once a week. Feels like things are pretty smooth now, maybe every couple of weeks, right? So be flexible in that. But regular meetings is a key to successful completion. The management landscape is, there are 5 different process groups. There's an initiation phase and there's a planning phase. That's what we've talked about this morning. Then it's execution, monitoring, and controlling, right? Regular meetings, regular status updates, checking in on people, making sure that things are happening, things are getting delivered. And then finally, here's the thing a lot of people don't think about. There's actually the closing part of this. How do we shut the project down? When we're at the end, there should be a formal closing process where you announce the project is done. I am now handing the project over to these people who are now going to maintain it, right? When they're finished building the ship, they do the bottle and they launch it. And now the shipyard has turned the ship over to the Navy or the shipping company or whoever, right? Same thing with your project. You announce we're done and then you move on. A couple of final things here before we do some Q&A. You've probably heard of these. And there's a debrief at the end of that, Elaine, right? A lessons learned. Here's what went well. Here's what could have gone better. Here's what we'll do differently next time, right? We talk more in detail about that in our full class. You've probably heard of these terms before. They're project management methodologies, Waterfall, and Agile. Let me briefly explain these. TLC warned us about this one. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Like that. So what Waterfall is basically you're managing a project in discrete terminal phases. In other words, think building. You're building a building. You can't put the roof on before you dig a hole and make the basement and create the foundation and build the supporting walls, right? You're manufacturing a car. You can't put the cup holders in until you put down the frame and the engine and put everything else in, right? Cup holders come in later. You can't do phase 3 before phase 2 and before phase 1. So that's what Waterfall is. You start here and you can't go to here until you've done this phase. When that's finished, then you go to the next, then you go to the next, then the next, and then you deploy and deliver, and then it's just maintenance, right? You can't start here unless you've done these other things first. That's Waterfall. a lot of projects can be managed this way, and it's helpful in the planning process. There's this other thing called Agile. And Agile is this collaborative process usually used in software development where you can have multiple teams working on different things at the same time. They're not dependent on, like this team isn't dependent on team one to get stuff done before they start. They can work independently. So I feel old with that song. I feel you, Maria. Right? I feel you. The 80s was 40 years ago. I'm sorry. Don't mean to burst anybody's bubble. But with Agile, you can have different teams working simultaneously on different aspects of the projects. Not all projects lend themselves to Agile or to Waterfall. Some projects might actually be a combination of both, where there's some Waterfall aspects where you go stage 1, 2, 3, and others where, okay, well, while they're doing that, we can have these teams working over here on different things. You can combine them and do sort of a hybrid deal, right? So that's the whole note about Agile. Also with Agile, you're going to have these things called sprints where you're trying to get stuff done in a short period of time, a week to 4 weeks tops, right? In terms of project management tools, ask around your organization for what tools you're using. You might already have some of these: Microsoft Project, Asana, Miro, Smartsheet, Monday, Jira, Zoho, Rike. These are some of the top project management tools, right? So, or try to use what you have. If you use Excel, a lot of people use that. It's not a project management tool per se, but it's what you have access to. And if you know how to use it, you can use it for a number of things, project schedules and planning and all of that. But I would strongly suggest you look at getting and using a dedicated project management tool that has a lot of the reports and the scheduling and the Gantt charts and the work breakdown structures and all of those things and communication tools built in there. Some are free, some might have a free trial. Kim, I would just look for best free project management tools on the web. But if you're managing projects for an organization and this is high level stuff, don't be cheap. Have them invest in getting you the right tools, and it'll save you so much time and headache and heartache in the long run, right? So look around. In terms of best project management practices, I'll leave you with this and then we'll do a little Q&A. Build your business case for the project. That's usually the sponsor's job, but you need to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. Develop a project brief that outlines all of the objectives and the deliverables. Create a project plan with timelines and phases if necessary. Establish clear and consistent communication. I'm basically recapping what I've shared with you. Maintain a schedule and a cadence for meetings and communication. Plan for setbacks. Do some risk management. What's the worst thing that could happen, and how would it affect our project? And do we need a plan B? Closely monitor your project for scope creep. Don't let people make changes to it without going through the formal change management process, which means talking to you and then talking to the project sponsor. Track everything related to the project. You need calendars, you need documentation, right? Budgets, everything matters. Keep project documents up to date, and then have a retrospective at the end where you can talk about best practices or what went well, what didn't go well, and what did you learn, what will you do differently next time. So I know that was a lot in about 40 minutes or so. Questions, what questions do you have? And we teach a full project management for the rest of us class. We can do that in 2-hour increments, or I taught one yesterday, full day, 9 to 4. We also have project management 101, 102, and 103. So if you want a deeper dive, there you go, dive deeper, learnit.com. And oh yeah, there it is. Carly, tell them about the stuff.
Thank you so much. I figured, James, while folks, as you're thinking about what questions you have as well, you can submit them in the Q&A section, just so we don't lose them and they don't get lost in the chat. If you navigate to the Q&A section, you can submit them there and I'll share them live. As well as we'll have a little bit of time. I think I can have some of you come off of audio. But if some of you have to run, again, just a reminder that we just scratched the surface today. If you are interested in taking the full-length workshop, you can go to learnit.com/courses and check out project management for the rest of us. You can also search by specific competency. We have several courses on project management, some that are a little bit more advanced than others. But the most immediate dates we have for public full-length workshops are February 24th and 25th and April 21st and 22nd. And those are split into two-hour workshops. So about 4 hours worth of facilitation and content, and networking, and doing more breakout rooms than we have room for here in this webinar style setting. So if you have questions about that, please reach out to me via email, or you can also reach us in Offsite, which is our free community. And that's where you can access today's recording and presentation slides. James and our other instructors are in there answering questions, both formally in Ask the Expert sessions every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. And also you can ask your questions in the topic areas and offsite as well. And we'll be creating badges for folks that attend all of our events on a quarterly basis. So if you are attending all of our Friday events for all 3 months, you'll get a badge of certification in design thinking. So we love to see that a lot of you are attending week over week. So thank you for being a part of that. Awesome. James, I don't know if you can see the questions coming through, but we have
I can, and I'm answering them. So one question was, does the class equal certification? No. As Carly mentioned, you'll get a badge, but if you want project management certification, go to pmi.org and read the list of requirements. There's an education requirement, either high school graduation or college graduation, and there's real world project management experience hours you have to have, right? Along with taking some classes from them and then taking a test, right? Does the class prepare you for this? Yeah, it's a great place to start. Could quality be incorporated into scope? Yeah, absolutely. It's part of the discussion, right? So what level of quality do we have to hit with this? Where would I get started in PM if I have no background in it? This class. And then come take project management for the rest of us, and then come take our other project management classes. And there's a thing called the Project Management Book of Knowledge, the PMBOK. You can order that online and start reading that. But basically immerse yourself in it. And if you've got some projects at your organization, Brooklyn, that somebody's working on right now, ask to join that project, because you're going to need project management experience if you want to get certified. Does the course count towards? No, not officially, but it counts in terms of getting you acclimated to the language and the lingo and the concepts. I do event planning. Can you see value in project management? Absolutely, Renee. I had an event planning company for about 20 years ago in another life. And if I knew half the stuff that I know now, I could have been even more effective back then. But in a lot of what I'm learning now, it's like, well, I did that before. And so that was great experience for understanding how to run projects and organizations later on. Will a certificate or anything be provided for attendance CEUs? No, you'll get a badge, right?
Also, James, yeah, I think if you take the full-length workshop, you do get a certification. You get a certification
that you attended. It's not PMI certification, right?
Exactly. Yes, but you can use those courses towards your certification. They count towards your certification.
Yeah. Did we answer all the questions? Delphine, 7th edition of PMBOK is already used. What do you mean already used? Like outdated, or you're using that now? Delphine. Because a lot of the concepts don't really change, right? The constraints are the constraints. Or are you just saying that's what's already out there? You're welcome, Dave. Glad to have you here. Somebody
James,
asked in regular chat, does offsite give access to the previous classes and sessions? Nikki says there's a new test that covers more material. Okay, yeah. I don't know what the new test covers and if PMBOK covers all of that, but you know, whatever classes or books you can take, I think it's all valuable. Plus whatever practical experience you can get in managing projects is valuable towards your certification. Right concepts overlap with different projects. Right. You're very welcome, Jorge. You're very welcome. Any other questions? This explains why my projects kind of fizzle. Yeah, I hear you, Jay. You know, we do the best we can with what we have, and you know, if you finish your project and it works out, woohoo, yay for you. But virtually every project is going to have some hiccup along the way with something, right? And especially in this age of COVID. If you're expecting equipment to come from someplace and it's delayed because of shipping, or you can't get computer chips or whatever, that's just a part of the deal, and you have to figure out what your plan B is and how to work around that, or just accept it. So you're never going to get to perfection with projects. But what you're trying to do is get to clarity, alignment, and right action, right, to make progress and complete. You're very welcome. Appreciate that. Anybody else? Any final questions? Got 3 minutes. This is free. Take advantage of it. Offsite is free, by the way. We have 5,000 members. Every Friday or every other Friday or something like that, we come and we do one of these. And Wednesdays, we do an Ask the Expert, where it's just a little bit of content and then a lot of Q&A. I've done a number of those sessions. So make sure you sign up, tell your friends, take advantage of that. And if your organization is struggling with project management or anything else, have me or any one of our expert instructors come and work with your organization. We still do that virtually, and we can do this content 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours all day, or we can customize things. So our whole goal is to help you learn things that make your life better, right? To make your job better. So that's our mission. That's why we do this. How do you sign up for offsite? Oh, great question. Offsite by learnit.com. How valuable is the PMI certification? Nara, you can search for that on Google, but the last time I looked, it could result in I don't remember if it was a 25% boost in pay or an extra $25,000. I think it was 25 something. But a lot of organizations, if they're not looking for dedicated project managers, they're looking for people with project management skills. And if you have the certification, that tells them, because it's not about just reading some stuff and taking some classes and passing a test. A big chunk of the PMI certification is real world project management experience. So you're just not going to pass a test and get it. You actually have to get in the trenches and get your hands dirty working on projects. So volunteer, work on projects in your organization, because if you want certification, you're going to need the hours. Yes, and 100% in gray hair. You still have hair? I'm starting to lose it. So, all right. Thanks from across the pond, Paul. Glad to have you here. Thanks for everybody for staying up late or getting up really early and starting your day off with us or ending your day. We love having you here, and I love sharing this information with you. I hope you find it valuable. Join offsite, download the slides, review the recording, tell your friends, talk to your company, have us come do some work with you. We'd love to help you. Happy New Year.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. As always, James, it's a pleasure having you here. So, of course, like James said, reach out to us with questions. If you want to dive deeper with us, we'd love to have you. Otherwise, we'll see you next week for our last event of January. All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks, James.
Take care. Ciao.